Late at night, in a quiet room filled with the soft humming of computers, Elena Ward sat alone, staring at the glowing screens in front of her. She was one of the many communication analysts who worked for the Earth's Orbital Monitoring Network, a system that kept watch over the signals coming in and out of space. It was supposed to be a calm shift. Most of the time, the screens only showed static, routine satellite updates or harmless cosmic noise. But that night, something strange happened. A sudden spike appeared on her monitor, a repeating pulse, faint but steady. Elena frowned, thinking maybe it was a technical glitch. She leaned closer, eyes scanning the waveform pattern. It wasn't random static. There was a rhythm to it, a structure that seemed too organized to be natural. She tapped a few keys, running the signal through the computer's analysis program. The result made her heart skip a beat. The system identified the sequence as an SOS signal. At first, she laughed nervously. "That can't be right," she murmured to herself. The universal distress code, 3 short bursts, 3 long, 3 short, was something even children learned in school. But who would be sending that from deep space? There hadn't been a real SOS from beyond the solar system in decades. Maybe a forgotten probe? A lost exploration ship? Still, the coordinates didn't make sense. The signal wasn't coming from anywhere near human settlements or colonies. It was coming from far beyond mapped space, a place so remote that no known human craft could reach it easily. Elena tried to trace the source, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The signal was weak, like a dying heartbeat, repeating every few seconds. She increased the sensitivity of the receiver, filtering out background radiation. Slowly, the pattern became clearer. It wasn't only the SOS. There was something else embedded inside the transmission, a faint modulation, like a hidden message within the distress code. The computer couldn't translate it. The characters didn't match any human language or encryption pattern known to Earth's databases. A chill ran down her spine. She sat back, staring at the monitor in silence. Could it be possible? Could this be a message from another civilization? She shook her head. That was ridiculous. Humanity hadn't heard a single verified signal from extraterrestrial life since the early 2100s. All recorded attempts at alien communication had turned out to be misunderstandings, atmospheric distortions, or hoaxes. And yet this signal didn't feel fake. It carried a kind of urgency, a desperate pulse that made her chest tighten. Elena decided to report it, even though she knew her supervisors might dismiss it as noise. She opened the official transmission log and typed in her report, labeling it as anomalous distress signal, source unverified. She attached the waveform data, the frequency graphs, and a short note. Possible SOS pattern detected. Signal origin outside charted regions. Before she sent it, she hesitated for a second. What if they laughed at her? What if it was nothing but interference? She had worked hard to earn her position in the communication division. Being wrong about something like this could make her look foolish. But her curiosity and instinct pushed her forward. She pressed send. Moments later, her screen confirmed that the report had been submitted to the central data hub. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. Outside the window, Earth glowed like a blue jewel against the black ocean of space. She tried to shake off the uneasy feeling building inside her. Hours passed, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time she looked back at the monitor, the signal was still there, repeating endlessly, calling out across the void. It wasn't a random pulse. It almost felt like a voice trying to be heard. She decided to listen to it through the audio translator. When the program converted the signal into sound, the room filled with soft, haunting beeps. They came in perfect rhythm, rising and falling like a cry for help. Even though she knew it was just data, it somehow felt alive, like someone was out there pleading to be found. Elena replayed it several times, her mind filled with questions. Who sent it? What happened to them? Why did the message sound so familiar, yet so alien at the same time? As dawn approached, the room brightened slightly from the artificial lighting cycle. Her shift was almost over, but she couldn't leave. The more she studied the signal, the more she realized how unusual it was. The background radiation was higher than expected, suggesting the source was near a supernova remnant or maybe a destroyed system. The frequency drift indicated motion. Either the sender was moving or their planet was in chaos. She adjusted the filters again and suddenly saw fragments of data she hadn't noticed before. Buried deep within the noise, there were faint digital bursts, tiny pieces of information packets like words broken into dust. The software tried to reconstruct them, and for a brief second something appeared on the screen. It wasn't complete, but the words made her freeze. "Help us." The rest was unreadable, scrambled beyond recognition. But those two words were enough to make her blood run cold. She immediately contacted her superior officer, Commander Rice, sending him the decoded fragment. Within minutes, he appeared on her screen, his face tired and skeptical. "Ward, do you know what time it is?" he asked. "Yes, sir, but this can't wait. I think I found a distress signal from outside human territory. It's transmitting in an unknown code. There's something inside it. A message." Rice rubbed his forehead, clearly unimpressed. "Probably some leftover transmission bounce. The system picks up that kind of garbage all the time." "I don't think so, sir," she insisted. "The signal repeats perfectly. And it contains a structure. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. That's universal distress." There was a pause. Rice leaned forward. "Are you saying someone out there is calling for help?" "I'm saying, I think they might be," she said softly. Rice told her to keep recording the signal and forward the data to the Deep Analysis Department. Then he ended the call. Elena stared at the dark screen. For a moment she felt small, as if the universe had suddenly become much bigger and more dangerous than before. She watched the clock tick down the last minutes of her shift, but she didn't leave. She wanted to see if the signal would stop. It didn't. It kept going, steady and patient, as though it knew someone was finally listening. Outside the station, satellites orbited silently, their metallic bodies catching the sunlight. The hum of machines filled the air, a reminder of how advanced humanity had become, and yet, how little it truly understood about what lay beyond. When Elena finally stood up and stretched, the world below her seemed different. She couldn't explain it, but she felt as if something had changed that night. Something had been set in motion. The next day, when the official report reached the Central Command Hub, scientists, linguists, and intelligence officers began examining it. Some dismissed it immediately. Others were intrigued. The data didn't match any known human origin point. The signal strength and frequency pattern hinted at technology far more sophisticated than Earth's current capabilities. Within 24 hours, the anomaly reached the top levels of the United Earth Space Command. What began as a faint signal on one woman's monitor became the most important mystery humanity had faced in decades. Elena didn't know it yet, but her discovery would soon pull the entire world into a storm that had been waiting in the darkness of the galaxy. Somewhere far away, someone or something had sent a call for help, and humanity had just heard it. The signal kept repeating across the stars, its rhythm echoing through the void. It was a cry of fear, of desperation, a whisper from a dying world. And though she couldn't yet understand its full meaning, Elena could feel one truth deep inside her heart, that this was not an ordinary SOS. It was a warning. And by answering it, humanity would awaken forces that had slept for generations, waiting for a reason to rise once more. The next morning, the world inside the United Earth Space Command building buzzed with quiet confusion. Elena's report had reached the higher division earlier than expected. Usually, such reports were filed, reviewed, and forgotten within a few hours. But this one was different. The system flagged it automatically under priority unknown origin. Within hours, it was being studied by a room full of experts who didn't even know who Elena Ward was. Inside a large circular room filled with holographic screens and maps of star systems, scientists and officers gathered around a central display showing the strange signal. The sound played through the speakers. 3 short pulses, 3 long, 3 short, over and over again. Everyone in the room knew what it meant, a universal cry for help. The room stayed silent as the sound echoed softly, as if the universe itself was speaking to them. A man with silver hair and a calm voice broke the silence. "Can we confirm this isn't of human origin?" he asked. He was Admiral Marcus Hale, head of the Space Command Intelligence Division. One of the analysts replied that the frequency pattern did not match any Earth-made technology. The energy signature was too refined, and the modulation used algorithms that human computers didn't recognize. It was something entirely foreign. Admiral Hale leaned forward. "Could it be an old probe or maybe a lost ship?" he asked again. Another officer shook her head. "No, sir. The coordinates don't match any of our past exploration routes. It's coming from beyond the Perseus boundary." Everyone looked at one another. Beyond the Perseus arm lay a dark region of space, uncharted, empty, and dangerous. No one went there anymore. Hours later, a special meeting was called in the underground command complex known as Fort Atlas. Hidden deep beneath Geneva, it was the heart of Earth's Defense and Exploration Authority. Inside, leaders from across the planet appeared as holographic projections: presidents, prime ministers, scientists, and military chiefs. The signal had reached the top level of command. On the screen, Elena's recording played again, this time with improved clarity. The beeps were faint but distinct. Alongside it, fragments of digital data appeared, decoded by the most powerful AI systems on Earth. They were broken, incomplete messages, but the words that could be recovered sent a wave of unease through the room. "Help us. They are coming. We cannot stop them." The president of the United Earth Council, a composed woman named Dr. Leona Maris, stood still, staring at the screen. For a long moment, no one said a word. Finally, she asked in a steady voice, "Can we verify who sent this?" A linguistics expert answered, "No, ma'am. The digital language structure does not match any known race or AI network. The architecture of the transmission is far more advanced than ours. Whoever sent this, they understand our distress protocols, but they are not human." A low murmur spread through the room. For decades, humanity had believed it was alone again. After the first few contacts with alien species a century ago, communication had slowly faded. Some races had disappeared, others had gone silent. Peace had lasted so long that people stopped thinking about extraterrestrial danger. But now, this signal had changed everything. General Corin Vega, commander of the Terran Defense Forces, crossed his arms and frowned. "So someone out there knows our SOS code," he said, his voice heavy. "That means they either studied us or they've met us before." Admiral Hale nodded slowly, "And they're asking for help. That's the part we can't ignore." The room grew tense. One of the science ministers, an older man with glasses, spoke nervously. "We don't even know who they are or what kind of threat they're facing. If we respond, we could walk straight into a trap." Another voice spoke from the side. "Or," said Dr. Amira Solon, chief xenologist of the Space Research Council, "it could be real. A civilization in danger, reaching out because they believe humanity can help. Either way, someone sent that message believing we would listen." The debate went on for hours. Some argued that Earth should stay silent and not risk drawing attention from unknown enemies. Others said it was humanity's duty to respond, that ignoring a cry for help would be immoral. The discussion grew heated, voices rising. Data flashing on screens, maps, star coordinates, simulation models of possible alien threats. Meanwhile, Elena sat in her small communication lab, watching the world above her explode into chaos because of something she had found by accident. She had been asked to stay silent for now, but curiosity gnawed at her. She wanted to know what was happening. Her discovery had gone beyond her control. By nightfall, a new report arrived from the Signal Analysis Division. They had run deep decryption scans using the full power of the EarthNet quantum computers. The message contained more than a simple SOS. It had a pattern of repeating data packets that, when visualized, formed a symbol, an emblem of sorts. It looked like a star surrounded by 6 spiraling arcs. None of the experts could identify it. But one thing was certain: the signal wasn't random. It was a deliberate call, aimed directly toward human space. In the council room, the scientists confirmed something else. The source of the transmission was not stationary. The coordinates were slowly changing, meaning the sender was moving or possibly running from something. That discovery sent a ripple of fear across the faces of everyone in the room. Dr. Maris turned to the defense officers. "If this is real," she said softly, "then someone out there is fleeing for their life, and they believe we can save them." Admiral Hale nodded grimly. "Or they're being hunted, and we've just made contact with their hunters." The president took a long breath. "We need options," she said. Over the next hours, teams of military and scientific advisors worked to develop response plans. Should humanity send a probe to investigate? Should they try to communicate first? Should they prepare for possible conflict? Every suggestion met resistance. Nobody wanted to make the wrong choice. Finally, it was General Vega who spoke up again. "Madam President, if that distress call is real and the sender's enemies are powerful enough to destroy them, then it's only a matter of time before those enemies reach us too. We can't pretend the galaxy is safe anymore." The room fell silent again. His words carried weight. Humanity had become comfortable, too comfortable after decades of peace. The old war fleets had been shut down, the great battleships stored away in Martian orbit like museum pieces. People had forgotten what it meant to be afraid of the stars. President Maris stood straight, her voice calm but heavy. "If this signal is what it appears to be, then this is not just a rescue," she said. "This is a warning. Someone out there is fighting for their survival. If we ignore it, we might face the same fate one day." She turned to Admiral Hale. "Prepare a full analysis of fleet readiness. I want to know what ships we can launch if necessary." Those words sent a chill through the room. For the first time in half a century, the thought of mobilizing the Terran Defense Fleet was real. Later that night, in her office overlooking the dark city, Dr. Maris replayed the signal alone. The soft beeps filled the air again. She imagined someone far away, watching their world burn, sending that desperate message into the void with the last of their strength. She whispered to herself, "What if we're their last hope?" Far away in the monitoring station, Elena received a secure message. It was from Admiral Hale's office. She was being temporarily reassigned to the Central Communications Center at Fort Atlas. No reason was given, but she knew why. Her discovery had become the most important piece of information on Earth. As she packed her things, she couldn't stop thinking about the words she'd seen on her screen. "Help us, they are coming." The more she thought about it, the less it sounded like a simple cry for help. It felt like someone warning humanity about something terrible approaching. Outside, the stars shone faintly, cold and distant. Somewhere among them, a civilization was crying out in fear, and on Earth, people were finally listening. The following day, the Council made its first decision. The signal would not be ignored. Humanity would answer, but carefully. Probes would be launched to triangulate the exact source. Communication channels would be opened using universal codes. And, if necessary, preparations for defense would begin quietly. Elena's discovery had shaken the foundations of human confidence. What was once a peaceful, comfortable civilization was now facing the possibility of something much larger, something beyond imagination. No one knew who the senders were. No one knew what hunted them. But everyone felt the same uneasy truth deep inside their hearts, that somewhere out there the darkness was moving, and the faint SOS from the edge of the galaxy was not just a cry for help. It was the first whisper of a coming storm. In the weeks after the mysterious SOS was confirmed, the world began to change in quiet, unseen ways. News of the strange signal had not been released to the public yet, but inside the walls of Fort Atlas, the highest levels of Earth's leadership were preparing for something they had not done in decades. For 50 long years, humanity had lived in peace. The war fleets built during the Expansion Age, when humans had fought across the stars, had been decommissioned, stored, and forgotten. The ships floated silently in orbit around Mars, cold and lifeless, their metal bodies gathering dust from cosmic winds. But now that peace felt fragile. The unknown message had shaken the confidence of even the calmest leaders. The words still echoed in their minds. "Help us. They are coming. We cannot stop them." No one knew who they were, but the fear was enough to wake up old memories of war and survival. A classified order was sent out under the name Operation Dawnfire. It was short and simple. Reactivate the Terran Defense Fleet. Within hours, engineers, scientists, and retired officers received encrypted messages recalling them to service. For many, it was like being called back from another lifetime. On Mars, inside the massive orbital dockyards known as the Red Halo, thousands of workers began reactivating ships that hadn't moved in half a century. Huge mechanical arms powered up, welding sparks filled the air, and maintenance drones flew between the dark hulls of sleeping giants. The fleet's ships were legends: the colossal dreadnought Valiant, the carrier Endeavour, the battlecruiser Sol's Hammer. Each had once been a symbol of human strength during the turbulent expansion wars. Now, their cold reactors were being brought to life again. Commander Juno Corrin, a young officer who had grown up hearing stories about the old war heroes, stood inside one of the docks, staring in awe as the Valiant's engines ignited for the first time in 50 years. The ship's hull trembled as blue light spread through its core systems, and the air filled with the deep, thunderous hum of power returning. It was like watching a sleeping beast open its eyes. On Earth, people began to notice unusual military movements. Massive supply convoys left for the Martian colonies. New communication satellites were launched into deep orbit. Rumors spread through underground news channels. Some said the government was preparing for contact with aliens. Others believed it was an asteroid threat. The truth, however, remained hidden. Only a handful of people knew that humanity was preparing to answer a call from beyond the stars. Elena Ward, the analyst who had discovered the signal, was now stationed at Fort Atlas itself. She had never imagined that her small discovery would lead to such a massive operation. When she arrived, she was surprised to find entire teams of scientists working day and night to decode the signal's hidden layers. The deeper they looked, the more mysterious it became. The transmission carried strange patterns of energy, ones that didn't just transmit sound or data but also seemed to react to human signals. It was as if the message itself was alive. Elena worked closely with Admiral Marcus Hale, who had been appointed as the head of the mission. He was calm, stern, and carried the weight of decades of responsibility. One evening, as they stood inside the main command hall watching holograms of the fleet's reactivation progress, Elena finally asked him, "Sir, do you really think we should go?" "We don't even know who sent that message." Hale's expression didn't change. He looked at the projection of the signal, a faint blue wave flickering in the air, and said, "We may not know who they are, but someone out there is in danger. When humans needed help centuries ago, we hoped someone would come. Now it's our turn to be that someone." His words stayed in her mind long after he left. For the first time, she understood that this wasn't just about curiosity or exploration. It was about humanity's nature, their refusal to ignore suffering even when it came from the unknown. Meanwhile, across Mars and the moon bases, the reawakening of the fleet was not easy. Many of the old systems were outdated. Engineers struggled to repair ancient reactors, update computer cores, and replace missing parts that hadn't been manufactured in decades. Old commanders who had retired to quiet lives were recalled, some unwillingly, others with pride. General Corin Vega, the man once called the Iron Wall of Mars, was brought out of retirement to oversee the operation. His once dark hair was now gray, but his eyes were still sharp. When he stepped onto the deck of the Valiant, the crew saluted him, and he felt the same rush he had known during his youth. "The galaxy has forgotten what we're capable of," he told his officers. "Let's remind them." As the fleet slowly came back to life, something strange began happening on Earth. The signal grew stronger. What was once a faint pulse now carried more power, as if the sender could sense that humanity was responding. Scientists noticed that the frequency shifted slightly, aligning more closely with human communication ranges. It was as if whoever sent it was trying to speak directly to them. The news reached Fort Atlas, and Elena was called into a meeting with the top scientists. They showed her a new decoded segment from the transmission. The message now contained new fragments, short words that hadn't been there before. One of them was hurry. The realization sent chills through everyone in the room. The sender was still alive, still sending the message and possibly aware that help was coming. The sense of urgency spread. The fleet's schedule was accelerated. Supply ships loaded with food, medical supplies, and defense drones were dispatched toward the staging point near Jupiter. Every day, the launch pads glowed with light as one ship after another joined the growing armada. The cold silence of space near Mars was replaced by the roars of engines and the hum of communication chatter. In the midst of all this, Elena found herself feeling both proud and afraid. She often looked at the stars, wondering who was out there waiting. Sometimes she dreamed of voices calling through static, crying for help. Other times she imagined something darker, shadows moving through the void, the unseen threat that had destroyed the unknown civilization. On the final day of preparation, the president of the United Earth Council made a secret speech to the fleet. Her face appeared as a hologram in every ship. "You are humanity's shield and our hope," she said. "Long ago, our ancestors looked at the stars with fear and wonder. Today, we look with purpose. Someone has called for help. We will answer, not with conquest, but with compassion. The galaxy will remember that when humanity was called, we rose." The words filled the ships with quiet determination. Across the fleet, engineers checked systems, soldiers readied weapons, and captains reviewed routes. For many young crew members, this would be their first mission beyond Earth's known borders. For the older ones, it was a return to something they had long buried, the spirit of the old warriors of Earth. As the countdown to launch began, Elena was assigned to the flagship Valiant, under Admiral Hale's command. Her role was to monitor and maintain communication with the source of the SOS. She felt nervous stepping aboard the massive ship for the first time. Its corridors were wide and metallic, filled with echoes of footsteps and the hum of machinery. The crew greeted her respectfully. Some knew she was the one who had discovered the signal that started all of this. When she entered the command bridge, she saw Admiral Hale standing before a massive view window, looking out at the dark expanse of space. "Are you ready, Lieutenant Ward?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, sir." He gave a small smile. "Then let's bring light to the dark again." Outside, hundreds of ships aligned into perfect formation, their engines glowing blue against the blackness. The command signal was given, and the first wave of ships began to move forward. From Mars, the great Terran war fleet began its journey for the first time in 50 years. The sight was breathtaking, a river of light streaming across the stars, silent but full of purpose. Back on Earth, the people still didn't know the full truth. They saw lights in the night sky and heard whispers about a deep space expedition, but to those who knew, it was something much greater. Humanity was not just exploring again, they were awakening. The old warriors of Earth, the protectors of the human race, had returned to the stars. And somewhere far away in the dark corners of the galaxy, a dying world might have felt the first spark of hope. The SOS had been answered. The sleeping giants of Earth had risen once more, and the universe was about to remember the power of humanity, the species that never ignored a cry for help. The engines burned brighter, cutting through the endless black. Elena stood by her console, heart pounding, watching the stars stretch as the fleet entered the wormhole corridor. For the first time in her life, she understood that this was not just a mission. It was history repeating itself, a new beginning written in the fire of ancient courage. As the Valiant vanished into the depths of space, the last echo of Earth faded behind them. Humanity had awakened its war fleet once more, not for destruction, but to answer the call of life beyond the stars. And whatever waited out there, friend or enemy, was about to learn that the children of Earth never turned away from a cry for help. The fleet moved silently through the blackness of space, engines burning a faint blue trail behind them. Hundreds of ships glided together side by side in perfect formation. They looked like a line of glowing stars drifting through the void. Inside the flagship Valiant, the crew worked quietly, their eyes fixed on the data screen showing their path through the wormhole corridors. Each jump brought them closer to the coordinates where the mysterious SOS had come from. Elena sat at her console, headphones pressed against her ears, listening carefully to the faint hum of space signals. Every few hours, she checked for any change in the distress call. It was still there, weak, trembling and distant like a whisper carried across light years. But she noticed something strange. The message had started to fade more quickly than before, as if the source was dying. Each time she recalibrated the receiver, she could feel a sense of urgency behind those flickering signals, like someone screaming but losing their voice. Admiral Hale walked up behind her. "Anything new, Lieutenant Ward?" She hesitated before answering. "The signal is weakening, sir. If we don't reach the source soon, we might lose it completely." He nodded, his face calm but serious. "Then we'll have to move faster." He gave the order to increase speed, and the massive ships roared softly as their drives powered up. The stars outside blurred into streaks of light as the fleet jumped through the wormhole gate, entering a region of deep space rarely seen by human eyes. Days turned into weeks. Inside the fleet, life settled into routine. Maintenance checks, navigation updates, tactical drills. But everyone felt the same growing tension. No one said it aloud, but the question hung in the air. What were they really flying into? On the 21st day, the fleet reached the outer edge of the Perseus Arm, near a desolate cluster of stars. The distress signal became clearer again, stronger now as if it sensed their presence. "We're close," Elena whispered, adjusting her console. The entire bridge grew silent as the signal source appeared on the main display. It was coming from a small solar system with 2 broken planets orbiting a dying sun. As they entered the system, the radar screens filled with debris. Shattered ships, twisted metal, and the remains of orbital platforms floated everywhere. The entire place looked like it had been torn apart by war. The crew stared in silence at the view outside, the once living world now reduced to ashes drifting in space. "Is this where the signal is coming from?" asked Captain Vega, the tactical officer. "Yes," Elena replied softly. It's still transmitting from somewhere within that debris field. The fleet slowed down, spreading into a wide formation. Small scout ships were launched to investigate. They navigated through the wreckage, scanning for energy readings. After hours of searching, one of the scouts reported a faint power source deep inside a massive, half-destroyed alien structure orbiting the second planet. The structure was enormous, larger than any space station humans had ever built. Its design was strange. Curved towers of silver metal, connected by glowing pathways that pulsed weakly with light. Admiral Hale ordered the Valiant and 2 escort cruisers to approach carefully. As they came closer, the structure's damaged sections became visible. Holes burned through the hull, black scorch marks, and what looked like melted armor. Whatever had attacked this place had used weapons far beyond human understanding. When they were close enough, Hale gave the command to open a communication channel. Elena transmitted a universal greeting signal, simple tones of peace used in first contact protocols. At first, there was only silence. Then slowly, the SOS pulse changed. The pattern shifted, growing stronger, almost like a heartbeat answering back. Elena's screen flickered, and the system suddenly began decoding a new transmission. The computer struggled for a moment, then translated the first words. This is the Valar refuge. Survivors. Need help. Everyone on the bridge froze. They had finally found the source, the ones who had called for help. Admiral Hale exchanged a look with Elena. Patch them through, he said quietly. The main screen filled with static, then cleared to show a dimly lit chamber inside the alien structure. There, surrounded by flickering lights, stood figures unlike anything humanity had ever seen. They were tall, thin, and silver-skinned, their bodies glowing faintly with a soft light. Their eyes shone like glass, reflecting the image of the humans who now stared at them in awe. The one in front spoke in a trembling but graceful voice, the translator rendering the words in English. Humans, you came. We didn't think anyone would hear us. Admiral Hale stepped forward. This is Admiral Marcus Hale of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress call. Who are you, and what happened here? The alien lowered its head slightly, a gesture of respect. We are the Valar, it said. Our world was destroyed. They came for us, the Kruthar. We fought, but we could not stop them. The bridge went silent again. Hale frowned. Who are the Kruthar? The Valar's expression darkened. They are death given form. A species that consumes. They take everything, our worlds are stars. We sent our SOS into the void, hoping someone would answer before we were erased. As the Valar spoke, Elena felt a cold chill crawl up her spine. She looked at the ruined system around them and imagined the terror that must have happened here. The screams, the fire, the collapse of civilizations. She realized that the faint signal she had found weeks ago was not just a message. It was the last cry of a dying world. Admiral Hale turned to his officers. Prepare medical and engineering teams. We're boarding that station. Over the next few hours, shuttles carried human rescue teams into the alien structure. Inside, they found hundreds of injured Valar, their once bright bodies dim and weak. The humans shared food, medicine, and power supplies, trying to keep them alive. The Valar were shocked by humanity's kindness. You came so far, one of them whispered to Elena. No one else ever does. Elena smiled gently. You called for help. That's enough reason for us to come. As the rescue continued, sensors on the Valiant picked up something disturbing. Unidentified energy signatures were approaching from the edge of the system. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. The computer struggled to classify them, but one thing was clear. They were not human. The alarm blared across the fleet. The tactical officer's voice was sharp. Multiple unknown ships inbound. Their formation matches what the Valar described. Admiral Hale's expression hardened. So the Kruthar have found them again. He immediately ordered the fleet into battle readiness. Fighters launched from carriers, defense shields powered up, and the air inside the ships filled with the hum of charging weapons. The humans had come to help, but now they were standing on the edge of war. Elena rushed to the communication console. The Valar leader appeared on the screen again, panic in its glowing eyes. You must run, it pleaded. They will destroy you as they did us. But Hale shook his head. No, we don't run from monsters. As the first enemy ships entered sensor range, the humans saw what they were facing. The Kruthar vessels were terrifying. Living ships made of black spiked shells that pulsed like muscle. They moved in swarms, fast and silent, their bodies glowing with a sickly red light. Every scan confirmed the same horrifying fact. These were not machines but organic predators built for war. The Valar survivors watched in silence as humanity's fleet formed a defensive wall around their station. Admiral Hale's voice rang through the command channels. "This is it, people. We came to save lives, and that's exactly what we'll do. Let the galaxy remember what it means when humanity answers a call for help." The battle began. Beams of light tore through space and explosions painted the darkness in fire. The Kruthar attacked in waves, but the human fleet held firm. The Valiant's main guns roared, cutting through enemy swarms with precision. Smaller ships darted between debris, launching missiles that burned like falling stars. Elena sat at her console, heart pounding, trying to maintain communication with both the fleet and the Valar survivors. The sound of gunfire and explosions echoed through her headset, mixed with desperate voices. "Shields at 60%. Someone shouted. "We've lost the Andromeda. Reinforcements to Sector 3. Through the chaos, she could still hear the faint voice of the Valar leader. "You fight for us," it said softly, almost in disbelief. "Why?" Elena answered without thinking. "Because someone has to." Hours passed like seconds. The space around them turned into a storm of light and wreckage. Human ships fell, but they refused to retreat. Every time an enemy vessel broke through, another human ship sacrificed itself to stop it. The courage of the fleet burned brighter than the stars themselves. When the battle finally slowed, hundreds of Kruthar ships drifted lifelessly in the void. The survivors fled into the darkness. The Valiant stood battered but unbroken, surrounded by wreckage and silence. The Valar ships, once nearly destroyed, flickered with life again. Their leader appeared one last time, eyes full of gratitude. "We thought no one would come, but you did. You saved what is left of us." Admiral Hale nodded, exhausted but proud. "That's what humans do." Elena watched the stars outside the window. The war wasn't over, she could feel it. But for now, they had brought hope where there had been only despair. The SOS that had traveled across the galaxy had not been ignored. Humanity had heard it and they had answered, not with fear but with strength. As the fleet prepared to return home with the rescued Valar, Elena realized something deep inside her heart. The universe was vast and dangerous, but humanity had proved once again that even in the darkest corners of space, compassion could shine brighter than any weapon. The battle had ended, but silence did not bring peace. The wreckage of destroyed ships floated quietly through the dark void, drifting like ghosts of the fallen. The human fleet stood damaged and scarred, its proud ships now covered with burn marks and twisted metal. Inside the flagship Valiant, the crew moved with tired steps, their eyes heavy but hearts alive. They had survived, and so had the Valar. Elena sat at her console, watching the fading sparks of battle outside the window. Her hands were trembling slightly. She could still hear the echoes of explosions in her mind, still feel the shudder of the ship when enemy fire struck. Around her, the crew spoke in low voices, some checking systems, others just staring at the stars. Everyone knew what they had done, what they had faced. Humanity had gone to answer a distress call, and they had fought a nightmare to do it. Admiral Hale stood quietly at the command deck, looking at the view screen showing the ruined alien station. The Valar were alive, but only barely. Hundreds had been rescued, yet thousands more were gone. He felt a deep ache in his chest. War always left a price, even when you fought for the right reasons. The communication light blinked softly. Elena turned to the Admiral. "The Valar leader is requesting to speak with you, sir." Hale nodded. "Put them through." The screen flickered to life, showing the Valar leader still weak but standing. Behind him, other survivors could be seen moving slowly, rebuilding what little they had left. The leader's glowing eyes met Hale's. "Admiral of Earth," he said in a calm, melodic voice, "you have done what we thought no one would ever do." "You came for strangers." Hale's expression softened. "We came because someone called for help," he replied. "That's what matters." The Valar leader inclined his head. "You're kind. You are unlike others. When the Kruthar destroyed our neighbors, no one came. When they devoured our worlds, no one stood against them. But you came from across the stars, ready to die for people you had never met. That is something even we cannot understand." Elena listened silently, her heart heavy and proud at the same time. She had never thought that answering a signal could lead to something so big. something that would change the way both species saw the universe. The Valar leader continued, his voice trembling slightly. We owe you our existence. Without you, our name would have been erased from time. But you have to know, this war is not over. The Kruthar will come again. They never stop. Admiral Hale nodded slowly. Then they'll find that humanity doesn't stop either. After the transmission ended, the Admiral called for a fleet-wide broadcast. Every ship, from the smallest fighter to the massive carriers, received the message. His voice echoed across the communication channel, steady and full of pride. This is Admiral Hale. Today we answered a call for help from beyond our world. We fought not for glory or conquest, but for life itself. Remember this day, crew of Earth's fleet. We showed the stars who we are. We are not conquerors, we are protectors. Cheers erupted across the fleet, mixed with tears and laughter. The crews embraced one another, some whispering prayers, others simply staring in awe at what they had survived. Humanity had done something that would be remembered for generations. Over the next few weeks, the humans helped the Valar rebuild their station. Engineers worked side by side with alien technicians, sharing tools, power cells, and hope. Communication was difficult at first, but gestures and smiles did what words could not. Elena often spent hours translating messages between the two sides, watching friendship slowly form where once there had been only fear. One day, while she was helping a young Valar repair a damaged power conduit, he looked up at her and said, "Your hands are small, but your hearts are vast." She smiled at his strange but beautiful way of speaking. "Maybe that's what makes us human," she replied softly. The Valar began to open up about their history. They told stories of their lost homeworld, their art, their songs. They shared ancient images of their cities. Tall towers of silver, glowing rivers, skies filled with light. Elena realized they were not so different after all. Both species had dreams, memories, and a deep fear of being forgotten. Meanwhile, the fleet's engineers worked day and night repairing damaged ships. The Valiant's engines were patched, hulls sealed, and systems restored. But despite all the progress, the crew could feel something shifting inside them. The galaxy suddenly seemed bigger, darker, but also more connected. Humanity had taken its first true step into the wider universe, and it had done so not with conquest but compassion. A few days later, the fleet prepared to leave. Supplies were loaded, final repairs completed, and goodbyes exchanged. The Valar gathered near the docking bay to see their saviors off. Their leader approached Admiral Hale and handed him a small object, a glowing crystal that pulsed softly with light. "This is our memory stone," he said. "It carries the voices of our ancestors. Let it remind your people that when they looked into the stars, they found friends." Hale accepted it with deep respect. "We'll carry it with honor," he promised. Before departure, Elena stood one last time on the observation deck, looking at the alien world slowly coming back to life. She could see Valar ships rising and falling, carrying materials to rebuild their homes. She felt a quiet satisfaction deep inside her. That weak, flickering SOS signal she had first discovered had now become the beginning of something much greater, an alliance born not of politics, but of kindness. As the fleet's engines powered up, the stars outside seemed to shimmer brighter. One by one, the human ships lifted away, leaving trails of light behind them. The Valar watched from below, their glowing eyes following the departing fleet like one might follow the light of hope itself. The journey home took months. The crew had time to rest and reflect. They held ceremonies for those who had fallen in battle, reading their names aloud across every ship. Even in death, their courage had become a legend. Elena often wrote in her logbook during the voyage. "I used to think space was just empty," she wrote one night. "Cold, silent, endless. But now I know it's full of voices. Some faint, some crying for help. We just have to listen." When Earth finally appeared on their navigation screens, cheers filled every deck. The blue planet shimmered like a jewel against the black void. Families waited. Governments prepared receptions, and the whole world stood ready to welcome back their heroes. But when the fleet landed, the stories they brought were not of victory alone. They spoke of friendship, sacrifice, and the promise of unity between species. Admiral Hale stood before the Global Council, the memory stone in his hand. "We went to answer a call," he said, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "What we found out there changed us forever. Humanity has always looked up at the stars wondering if someone else was out there. Now we know they are, and they know we are too. The council chamber was silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. The news spread across the world. For the first time in history, humans were no longer alone, and the universe was no longer just a mystery but a shared home. Years passed, and the story of the SOS became a symbol. Children learned about the brave men and women who had flown across the stars to save strangers. Schools built models of the valiant, and songs were written about the fleet that answered. Humanity had found a new purpose: to protect, to explore, and to build bridges instead of walls. Elena continued her work, now leading the Interstellar Communications Program, helping develop systems that could connect human worlds with the Valar and other species yet to be discovered. Sometimes late at night, she still listened to the deep hum of the universe through her old receiver. Every now and then, she caught faint signals, some random, some coded, and one that always made her smile. The soft, rhythmic pulse of the Valar greeting. It was their way of saying thank you. Admiral Hale retired years later, but his name was remembered as the man who turned a desperate cry for help into the beginning of a new era. Before his last public speech, he looked up at the stars and whispered, "If anyone out there ever needs us again, we'll come." And somewhere far away among the stars, a faint light blinked. Another SOS, another voice calling into the void. But this time, the universe knew who would answer. Humanity's war fleet was no longer asleep. It was awake, watching, and ready. Not for conquest, but for hope. The story of the SOS that awakened humanity's war fleet became more than history. It became a reminder that even in the darkest corners of space, compassion could ignite a light powerful enough to guide civilizations. It proved that when humanity listened, the universe changed. And as long as there were voices calling out in the dark, humanity would always be there to answer.